Everyone is jumping in and says they're using AI, but very few can tell you where it's working and if it's actually helping.
But here's the truth: AI isn't the future of your business. You are.
After decades in cybersecurity and the FBI's InfoGuard, we've learned every company has to answer two main questions for themselves. How will they implement AI effectively? And what are the risks of doing it wrong or not doing it at all?
And what people really need to understand is that doing nothing is an action, it is a decision, because AI is the next generational shift, just like the automobile.
Absolutely. It is a generational change. And like the automobile, sure, we lost horse carriage mechanics, but we gained an entirely new industry.
And AI is already rewriting decisions for organizations all over the world. It's their decision process, their forecasts, even the way that customers will trust them and their employees. AI alone is not evil. It's obedient. It does exactly what we tell it. And it also does what we forget to tell it not to do.
Absolutely. The promise is that we'll have workflows that never sleep. The danger is that we'll have rollouts that leak intellectual property and sensitive data, the critical gold in your organization that makes your brand yours.
And so, David, the question isn't can we use AI? It's can we trust it? And can we trust ourselves and our employees to use AI the right way? Not by fearing it, but by governing it.
Yep. AI is not your replacement.
It's your next power tool, and it's time to learn how to use it right.
All right, let's get started. So, we're going to talk about the safe AI rollouts for business without risking security. So, when we think about it, why AI? Why artificial intelligence? Why are so many organizations, jumping in and pioneers are launching it, trying to integrate it into their workflows, but there's a lot of mishaps, right? They're using it for content creation, automation within quality control, building efficiencies, building smarter workflows.
And so, to expand on that, I wanted to put together a list of a few early adopters,
Yeah, I like
organizations,
this.
companies that have really been ahead of the curve in figuring out how to leverage AI and LLMs to really provide amazing results and return on investment. So, just a couple: Blue Bottle, coffee shop and roaster that you've probably heard of, has a family of retail shops in Northern California. They
One
were
of your
having,
favorites. One of
yeah,
your favorites. I'm
some
having some
fantastic
right now.
fantastic coffee. Yeah, they were really struggling with their pastry ordering. There was a ton of estimation that was leading to two outcomes: either out of stocks at their shop or a lot of waste. So they really wanted to try to leverage AI to refine their ordering process, get more predictive, get more data driven, and tighten that alignment to expected demand.
Is
Uh,
that why I don't have a pastry here?
that's exactly
Because
right, David. Yeah.
where's my pastries? All right, sorry.
So after implementing this,
You leave two guys unattended on a webinar, and this is what you
yeah,
get.
this is where we just start talking
Sorry.
about food,
Let's get
especially in the
back at
morning.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Blue Bottle saw an 8% improvement in their ordering accuracy in the first
That's
month.
big. That's
And
big.
that's before iteration. That's before
Mhm.
refining this process. They were able to see 8% reduction in waste in month one. There's a couple others here. Ticket Crushers is a law office also in the Bay Area, really struggling with their outbound outreach. Implemented an automation to do their outbound strategy and quickly convert their recipients of that outbound to potential clients. They attribute a 40% increase in their revenue just from this process. So a couple others listed here. The moral of the story is people who are jumping in and having governance and going through the mapping process that we're going to discuss here in a minute are really seeing immediate business results.
Yeah, absolutely. The one I was familiar with is Alpha Graphics down in Lake Mary, Florida. They had a 60-minute job prep in their big commercial printing, quality control, and finishing process. It took them an hour to do that. It cut it down to 80% right after implementation. But they had gone through the process that we're going to outline.
And those designers from there, can then spend their time on new designs, on new work, on new clients instead of having being sucked back into the execution of projects that were already done. So efficiency on the production side and also on the revenue side.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the whole point of this. It's not AI replacing people, it is creating more high level, more creative, more strategic, valuable time that your existing people can do. It might be able to save us from hiring additional people to do, you know, tedious tasks or repetitive tasks, right?
Exactly right.
So the questions that arise after seeing these case studies is what about us? What about you? Right? Like, how can we roll it out effectively? How can we maximize our investment? How do we pick the right tools? And what do we need to watch out for? Because these were the success stories, right, Zach? I mean, there was a whole bunch that we found organizations that invested, jumped in quickly, didn't properly integrate governance and planning. They rolled it out like a typical technology project without the right steps, and they fell short, right?
Not only
They
did they
had
fall short, they didn't get the returns that they wanted. They also created more issues for their
right.
organization, right? It ended up accelerating security risks and concerns. And that's where this framework and that's where these tips and tricks that we're going to discuss today really fall into place. So
So
top
when we talk
level.
about AI, yeah, when we say artificial intelligence in the context that we're talking about, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I like to break it out into two fundamental types or styles or brands of AI. The first one that I think most people are familiar with at this point are what we call generative AI. So this is AI that is creating something, creating an output based on an input or a prompt supplied by a user. If you're on ChatGPT and you ask ChatGPT a question, if you ask it to summarize something, you are giving it a prompt and it is spitting out a result. That is risky. Why? Because prompting a large language model, an LLM, incorrectly or providing data to it that it shouldn't have access to opens up risk. The more advanced, the more mature style of AI is agentic, which is automated. This is an AI that acts independently. This also carries risks, right? If it is not configured properly, if you don't have guardrails in place, there is the opportunity for the agentic AI to do something that you don't want it to do. So,
So the generative one is what most employees are using themselves, whether we know it or not, right?
that's exactly right.
And agentic is where an organization can really train a model to do work automatically 24/7, 365.
It's a much more advanced application, and it takes a lot more planning, a lot more workflows, a lot more guardrails in place to be able to have AI functioning independently without a human that's directing it to do a specific task. So we talked about those risks. We have a graphic up here called the lethal trifecta, which is really talking about three buckets of risk that are applicable both in the generative and the agentic space. The first is access to private data, and this should be pretty self-explanatory, right? You are giving AI models data, could be financials, could be pricing information, could be
Could be
employee
Mary
data, customer data,
Johnson's medical records, right? Yeah.
you name it, right? But you are signing this over the moment that you press send or upload. AI has the ability to externally communicate that data. We can look at this from the way that AI models are trained. Every input that you put into ChatGPT Basic is training that model for future output, right? It is influencing that model's ability to communicate potentially sensitive data that you have given it. And beyond that, the AI is also training itself from content that you don't necessarily trust. We've all heard about AI hallucinations. There is a lot of noise around bad data. And so the combination of these three, your private data, bad data, and the AI model's ability to communicate that data creates a lot of foundational risk from using these tools. So, from there, David, if you want to walk through what governments have been trying to do to mitigate this risk or provide some guidance for organizations today?
Yeah, when we look at guides or roadmaps, European Union kind of led this initiative and created the EU AI Act, and it's a mandate for organizations large and small there. Here in the United States, in the land of the free, we don't have mandates. We have guides and recommendations and best practices. We have standards. And NIST did come out in 2023, just a couple of years ago, with a really good AI risk management framework. And while it's advisory only, it's very good. And it provides a fundamental, clear roadmap that we found that the successful case studies that we just talked about, like our favorite coffee maker, they actually followed it and wound up well. And the ones that we found that weren't doing well, we found weren't really following the framework. So we're going to walk everybody through that NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology framework, because it is what we have here in the land of the free. Do you want to walk us through the principles?
Yeah, and I think I just want to quickly add, NIST is, before they came out with this AI risk management framework, they also have done the cybersecurity frameworks that a lot of you are familiar with. So they are really, really well versed in creating documentation and high level policy that really has impacted just about every major cybersecurity strategy that we've been exposed to. So these folks really, really know what they're doing, and we take these frameworks with a lot of gravitas, a lot of serious thought. So yeah, top level, what's the purpose of this framework? It's to enable dialogue, understanding, and actions. How are we managing our risks that are associated with using AI, and how are we building trustworthy AI workflows that have guardrails, that have policies, that impact the negative or that affect the potential negative impacts of enacting workflows. Top level principles, and these are really, really important. First and foremost, AI policies aren't set and forget. This isn't something that you can decide, this is how we're going to use AI, and these are the tools that we're going to use, and now we're good for the next 2 years, 5 years.
Right, and not revisit it on a regular basis.
These things
right?
are changing so quickly. And as part of this framework, we're going to talk about how we're monitoring, how we're collecting data, and how we're iterating new ideas, new workflows through this. So there needs to be a constant cycle of feedback loop that is going to amend and change how we are setting up those policies. AI is going to be used by employees from multiple departments, from accounting, from operations, sales, executive team, you name it. So your AI governance team, your AI committee really needs to be cross-functional and make sure that it's including different voices from different divisions of an organization. That's really important. Finally, this should seem pretty simple and easy to understand, but we want all of these AI decisions to be outcome driven, clearly defining the goals of what your organization is using AI for is going to dictate the decisions that are made in the mapping and planning process. So really finding those outcome driven ideal results and then using that to frame all of the dialogue that's going to happen to get us there.
And I think what's important here to note too, and that's great, Zach, because this isn't theoretical, right? By picking the right team and picking a pilot program and identifying what metrics you're going to measure, that makes all of this real. And it allows you to measure the success of rolling out AI in your organization. And one thing is that if you don't do anything, you don't have an AI policy, you don't have anybody in charge of AI, and there's no governance, then people are already using it. And it's going to really increase your risk without you even realizing it. We're going to get into that in just a second.
Yes, we are.
So let's walk through the 4 iterative steps. You want to walk us through govern, map, measure, and manage?
Yeah, so this is, again, treat this like a cycle, right? That iterative process. It goes from govern, map, measure, manage, and back to govern. Govern is is the most important piece of this, and it really is informing the other three functions. This is, what policies are we setting? What processes are we using? What tools are we using? Who is using those tools? Making sure that everything is clearly defined so you don't have AI chaos in your organization.
It's really the guardrails of the project, right?
Correct.
It's really the foundation.
And it's going to impact all three of these other functions.
And then what about mapping?
Yeah,
Mapping is really, when we think of project management, it's the initial project management roadmap, right? It is the metrics, it's what you're going to measure, the selection of the tools, and the timeline, and identifying that pilot group, right? You want to start small, prove your case, create a proof of life and a good ROI, return on investment for you. And then after that, scale it.
Right, and I think we talk a lot about crawl, walk, run as a fundamental approach to really any tech onboarding that we recommend, whether it's AI or not. But in this context, your first use cases are going to be pretty simple, right? Maybe one or two steps, maybe a couple of people or a couple of different divisions. But we're trying to really define the context. What are we trying to do with this workflow, with this automation? Who is it going to affect? How are they going to use it? What tools are they going to use? Do we have enough information? Do we have enough controls in place that we can pilot this and move forward? That process, those discussions, that's what mapping is all about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then measure and manage seem pretty self-explanatory, right? Once it's rolled out and you've identified what you're going to measure, right, in the mapping process and through governance, correct?
That's exactly right. But measure really specifically is establishing KPIs that are measurable. Whether that is cost savings, time savings, an improvement on accuracy of a specific workflow or deliverable, whatever it needs to be. You need to have a way to track that and determine, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Is all of the work that we've been doing to automate this, are we getting better results from it?
And throughout each of these, when you think of traditional cybersecurity controls, right, there are many that will assist. Okay, should something go wrong, right? When you think of governance, you think of having cybersecurity leaders, right? Experienced cybersecurity professionals trained in that sector and providing guidance on audits, exams, policy creation, developing of incident response plans, etc. When you get to mapping, you think of having the devices that they're going to be using fundamentally covered in the cybersecurity sense, right? With endpoint detection and response, data loss prevention, the Microsoft 365 suite have threat hunting involved in that. And then once it's rolled out, having eyes on glass 24/7 throughout the network, right? While traditional cybersecurity isn't necessarily monitoring the internal AI use, should something go wrong, this is an increased risk now. This is an increased attack surface. It widens. And so should attackers get inside, all the more reason now more than ever to have things like SOC as a service and SIM in place managing the entire network. Is that fair?
You nailed it with a wider attack surface. And when you're bringing in other tools, when you're bringing in these AI automations and sometimes multi-step and a lot of different tools, you're right. You need two big buckets. Up here, you have guidance, and that's a security expert that has done this before, that really understands how data moves and how to restrict that and have the right guardrails in place. And then visibility for all of those endpoints, applications, SaaS that you just mentioned. There's a lot of cybersecurity controls listed here, but really it's guidance, visibility.
Yep, that's exactly right. So, one more thing. And this is really why we have chosen to focus on the NIST framework and why we're even bringing this webinar, why this webinar is so timely today. And that is, 10, 15 years ago, we had technology in our offices, and should something go wrong, right? Overall, hate to admit it, but we were okay. I mean, let's think about it. Like, we still had physical kinetic processes in place to take and exchange currency, right? To accept money, to pay for services. We had ways of rendering medical treatment, even though the computers were down. We had ways of conducting business, of manufacturing. And we have now reached, especially in light of AI and how AI is being rolled out, and the fact that it scares a lot of people. It scares a lot of business leaders, and a lot of business leaders have stood back and said, we want to hang tight. But we are more technology dependent than ever before. Today, we pick up these devices 264 times here in the United States every single day. Let that sink in. 264 times we are grabbing our phones. That is far more than dependence. Okay? That's serious. And we are so dependent. We've gone through this digital transformation where when things go wrong with our technology, it matters more now than ever before because it's more disruptive, because we've gone away from those physical kinetic processes. We can't function. We can't render medical care. That's why people risk medical crises and have to be shipped hours away to another health system when there's a ransomware attack and things like that, right? It's why businesses literally shut down. Manufacturing literally halts when production shuts down because we're so interconnected. And why there's such a risk in doing nothing. So what does that new report say, Zach, about shadow AI?
Yeah, I mean, you're right on with tech dependence. I think the important detail here is that it's accelerating, right? Especially workers who are younger and newer to the workforce are going to use these tools, regardless of
Yeah.
of whether they're
Whether the boss says okay or
says
not.
okay, you can do it or not. They're going to use
Right.
it. This study suggests, after surveying, was it
250,000 U.S. employees anonymously.
The estimate is
77.
that 77% of them are using shadow AI. So what's shadow AI? That's an employee who is using an AI tool. It could be ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, it could be Claude. Which one it is doesn't matter, but outside of an organization's governance of an acceptable AI use policy.
And so what does that mean?
Three in four workers are using ChatGPT for their job, and you don't have visibility for what they're uploading, what data, whether it is confidential,
training,
private,
right?
IP,
We haven't trained them, right? We haven't. If we don't know what they're using, we don't know if they're using a compliant system, meaning if you're a healthcare organization and they're using the free version or even the paid personal consumer version of ChatGPT, it doesn't comply with HIPAA, right? And we don't know that they're even using it or whether they've been trained to know how to use it right. And so a big risk. And this is where we're at, right? So it shows, it gets to your point earlier when we first started this off, and that is inaction and having no AI policy and not doing anything with AI is inaction. That's a decision. And this is the result, right? 77% of people are just going without you.
Going rogue.
Right? Yeah. And so that's a huge risk. And so organizations really need to take control over this. So when we think about what is compliant AI and what's not, we just grabbed the two, Coke and Pepsi, the most common, names, right? ChatGPT and Copilot. Copilot's Microsoft's AI right through M365. ChatGPT's OpenAI. They were the pioneers of this, right? You can insert almost any other one here. But in general, the free and pro version of ChatGPT is not HIPAA compliant if you're in the healthcare space. So using it in any sense is violating HIPAA. In the manufacturing space, you have a violation risk of ITAR and EAR. In legal, it has privilege waiver and confidentiality risk. And in the finance, think of community banks and credit unions, GLBA and CIP violation risk, right? Non-public financial data exposure. When you get to the Microsoft Copilot, Basic and Pro, it is better because it sits behind the firewall. But at those levels, at the Basic and Pro license level, it's not HIPAA safe. It's not, there's a risk in CMMC and NIST 800. There's confidentiality and privilege risk for legal and GLBA and CIPC risk, right? And then what makes things compliant? Why don't you walk us through that?
So there's key factors. I think taking a quick step back, this is a perfect example of governance in action, right?
Yep.
In selecting the tool that's going to meet compliance requirements and enforcing a policy that prevents employees from accessing non-compliant AI tools at the organizational level. I mean, this is governance in action. So the key factors for compliant AI on the HIPAA side, obviously a BAA, right, and having that agreement baked in. Something that we really look at very carefully is whether your data is housed in the U.S. Compared to, say, China would be a really good example of a insecure and non-compliant server storage. Controlled access and logs is really important for CMMC is a really good example of making sure that you have a really dedicated log of all of these actions, of all of these events that are happening for computers in your organization, devices in your organization. And number 4, I think probably the most important and what can be actionalized easiest in your organization is instituting a prompt training program to really teach employees and users how to prompt effectively and how to prompt safely.
100%, because AI is not your grandpa's technology stack, right? There's a certain way of prompting and a certain way not to. So that was a good that was a really good explanation that you did. And when we think about it too, what we're talking about when we say select the right tool, what we mean is you say, these are the tools you all can use, and we're going to block all others. Everything else, right? You use anything else at your employment risk, and these are the safe ones, and we're going to train you how to do it, right? That's basically what we're seeing gets implemented in the organizations that do it well. So when we think of the art of prompt training, right? The best example I can think of is what we've actually seen in healthcare, right? People using a non-compliant LLM or AI product, right? And they are stressed. They're doing really good work for the community, but it's 3:00 in the morning. They are stressed out, and they upload Mary Johnson's medical records and they say, summarize this for me. And AI is not evil. AI will do it. AI will summarize it, give you the treatment plan, identify the the medicine plan, etc. And then you go about your day. It just saved that nurse who's stressed out and overworked and stretched too thin. Just saved her time. That's the benefit of AI. The damage is that that's a HIPAA violation, right?
And so now Mary Johnson's medical chart is training future prompting for anybody else.
Correct.
Right. That's the problem.
And can be pulled out and can be pulled, right? And can be found. So when people are using and investigating and looking into Mary Johnson, they'll be able to find her medical records.
Correct.
And when it shows that the treatment was rendered here, guess what? That organization's got a HIPAA violation. So the way to do it is to anonymize it. Have it say patient 1, and then identify everything else that she has. So that way it can still render the treatment plan and the medical care, etc., but it's not tied to any patient. There's no way of tying it back to her, and that's the key.
I bet you that everybody who's watching this webinar, everybody who's on here right now has probably seen a redacted report, right? Sometimes when the government declassifies historical record or a letter or whatever it may be, you'll see those black boxes, right, that are covering up
Yes.
sensitive data. Conceptually, we're talking about the exact same thing here. You
Right.
are redacting whatever you're providing these large language models to prevent any personally identifiable information or any intellectual property, right? So
Yep.
proprietary information, pricing models, anything that you don't want public. This isn't rocket science. We're just saying
Right.
redact it.
Yep. Yeah,
That's
and
that's the ball game here.
yeah, and it's the same thing regardless of industry. When you think of manufacturing, finance, legal, it's really the same thing, because being able to not identify that deposition transcript to that witness or that specific case, that's what does it. I think the legal industry will understand it the most, but it's really important for manufacturing that has intellectual property and CAD files and designs, and obviously in healthcare.
And this is just creating a habit, right? It's
Yep.
it's it's not hard to do it. It's just making sure that before you click submit, you've really thought through, is there anything that's sensitive on what I'm providing in this
Yep.
prompt?
Yeah, and when we think of prompt training too, all attendees of today's webinar will receive our prompting tips. We have some set guidelines for prompting, and they're really, really practical. They're really useful. We will be sending that out to everybody.
Good call out.
So what are we supposed to avoid as we kind of wind down and we go high level? What are the top 5 mistakes to avoid? Walk us through them.
Yeah, the first is not taking governance seriously, right?
Right.
And I feel like a broken record, or I'm beating a dead horse, or insert your own cliche here, but that is step one, right? Conducting a risk assessment to really understand and ensure that your network is safe and buttoned up, and then having a security expert walk through what are good AI policy creation, what tools are in bounds or in scope, how can we install guardrails for data loss protection is something you brought up, David. I think is a great call out. And from an organizational level, make sure that we have a really strong foundation in place before we start iterating and building workflows and building use cases for AI.
Yeah, I mean,
That is number one.
yeah, I mean, the people that I've seen that have rolled this out, the ones that we've helped kind of been involved in, like they really go and identify, here are the manual tasks that we're doing, right? Here are the step by step. And if you can speed it up or fix the process in the human sense, in the manual sense first, that is the most important step, right? Because otherwise you're going to be automating chaos, right? You're really going to be automating this really bad process. So what's the point of that, right?
It's AI is not a magic bullet.
Right. It's going to speed things up, but it's going to speed up bad stuff if you don't have a good process in place.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Excellent point. So we also have put together this kind of executive checklist, right? Align things with NIST AI risk management framework. Focus on the mapping process, the workflows. Identify things in your organization that are repetitive, that are rule-based, and that you can measure the output with. I mean, you talked about KPIs and really identifying those. That's really important because we want to be able to measure the rollout in the pilot program correct, right?
Yep, exactly right. And I think a piece of that is number 4 on this list is crawl, walk, run, starting with relatively simple use cases. Even because you're just getting started, we really want to have what we call a human review cadence in place. So this is a double checking, a human set of eyes to make sure that what's being produced is what's intended to be produced. We're looking for outliers, we're looking for errors, we're looking for data hallucination that is creating an unintended output. And we really have to have that review process with cross-functional people from different teams inspecting these things to make sure that this is working the way that we want it to before we think about scaling up and going to that more agentic and automated space.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's critical.
Yep. And then identifying that prompt training and engaging leadership. I mean, I think it's important, even a small business, like somebody has to own the AI rollout and somebody has to be relying on somebody that understands security. I'm not just talking about IT, I'm really talking about security, because when we're talking about the risk of data loss prevention and eyes on glass, that's really the security aspect. And so having leadership tied hip to hip with somebody that can really make sure that the guardrails are in place is really key. It's just practical. So you want to walk us through the offering that we have for everybody?
Yeah, so first, I mean, I think thank you to everybody who's joined today. I hope this has been informative, and we've really just scratched the surface and provided some 30,000-foot high level tips for the right way to approach AI adoption and making sure that you're viewing it, excuse me, through the lens of cybersecurity and controls and safety. From there, this is a topic that I'm really jazzed about, and I know that David is too, and really our whole team here at NetGain is. So we have developed what we're calling a AI strategy workshop that is going to go a little bit deeper into those four iterative functions that governance, mapping, management, measurement. Um,
Yeah, and we're
within
going
the
to
frame,
apply that to
individualized to your
your
business.
individual organization, right? Like how can you, like helping you identify how to roll out AI in a pilot program within your organization.
And you'll be able to come out of this workshop with a framework of a plan. I'm not going to say
Yep.
fully baked plan because it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take a lot of investment from the cross-functional members of your team and your organization. But this is a great place to start.
It's a
It's
great
going to have
kickstart.
really
Yeah,
great
it's a great
take-home
kickstart.
resources.
Yep.
I'm really excited about this. I know David, you've already done 2 or 3 of these. And
Yeah,
we're
and
excited to open this up to more clients and really
yeah,
anybody.
the feedback has been exceptionally positive, and it's really a collaborative approach. There's no, first of all, it's complimentary. There's no sales aspect here. There's no cost or thing. We just want, we have the framework that we've identified that has worked in the past repeatedly, and we know what not to do. And doing it yourself often leads you just in a vacuum chamber, not to know what some of the pitfalls are. So we just want to help guide an organization and help collaborate with them. That's it. And we just want to get you started and then check in with you along the way and see how it's going.
And make
And
sure that foundation is solid, right?
yeah,
Because if you start shaky, it's the same thing about talking about those automating chaotic human process. Same logic applies here. Let's have a good foundation, a good understanding of governance, and then start to build and start to build.
absolutely. There's a QR code that is safe that you can scan right now on there. If not, we will send out information on this to everybody. You're welcome. Each one will be individual for each organization. So it's not like just one that we're holding with everybody in attendance. So we'll make it customized and we'll sit with you for an hour and really kickstart your AI program.
And it'll be
It's
a lot of
been
fun.
working. Yeah, it really is. They're great conversations and it's been working really, really well. So we invite everybody to take advantage, use us to improve your organization, and we look forward to hearing from you. And we thank you for your time today and for attending. We know everybody's busy, and with the holidays coming up, we just wanted to get this out there. You want to wrap up with some final thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, I think just recapping, AI is not evil. I mean, I know that we've spent a lot of time today talking about risks and the importance of governance, but remember, AI is obedient. It's going to do what you tell it to do if you've set it up correctly, set up your workflows correctly, set up your governance to where you're safe. And so the future of your business is impacted by AI, but it's not AI alone. It's your behavior, it's your planning, it's your employees, it's how you can best leverage it moving forward.
Absolutely. Nicely said. So anybody, here's our contact information. We also invite you, if you have a great AI story or you have a success story or you want us to map your journey, we have a couple different podcasts, Breaching the Boardroom, which is net gains, and then ours that Zach and I often do, where we talk about the cybersecurity end of it with Cybercrime Junkies. But everybody is, if you have a good story, you have a good thought leader you want to recommend to us, please reach out to us. Our contact info is there. We're always interested in good, positive, productive conversations. So we thank everybody for attending, and we will be reaching out with your take-home resources and your follow-up information. Thanks again,
Thank you so
everybody.
much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, everybody.